Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to the first session in a series of 12 events that the Council on State Public Affairs is doing across the state of New Jersey. New Jersey's State of the County and State of the Region 2012. We're very grateful to our sponsor, Allstate, our series sponsor, and many guests who are here this morning and will be watching this video. But as you know, the videos of the series will be taped. Every video will be posted on the website. And as we move through our series of county events, we hope that each session will inform the later ones, pardon me, and you'll get to see a real chance to see what people are thinking across the state. It's a real grassroots look at New Jersey and what people are thinking about the economy, about education, and about healthcare. So we're delighted to welcome our guests here this morning to the first of the series, State of Middlesex County 2012. And I'd ask each of our guests to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what you're doing and why you're here. And Kevin, let's start with you.
Yes, certainly. Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for having us here today. My name is Kevin McCabe. I'm the president of the New Jersey Carpenter Contractor Trust, which is a nonprofit organization which is overseen by a joint management labor board of trustees. And the goal of our organization is to provide outreach, marketing, and now under a new direction, business development for our signatory contractors and the members of the Northeast Regional Council of Carpenters, which is 30,000 members strong, New York State, Long Island, and New Jersey. But one of our principal tasks at this point in time over the next year or so is to work cooperatively with our partners, our stakeholders, in trying to provide business development to put New Jersey residents to work.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Stephanie?
Hello, I'm Stephanie Hoopes-Halpin. I'm assistant professor and director of the New Jersey Databank at the School of Public Affairs and Administration at Rutgers-Newark. And I'm also the author of the report called ALICE, which stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed, Financial Hardship in New Jersey, which I wrote with United Way.
Hello, everyone. I'm Freeholder Jim Polos from Middlesex County, former mayor from Highland Park. I've been a Freeholder since 1998. I currently serve as chairperson of the Department of Public Safety and Health. Formerly, for 10 years, served as chairperson of our Public Properties Division, which also oversaw the implementation of green technology throughout Middlesex County. Very pleased to be here today. I think that this is a great opportunity for us to discuss a very important issue about the economy. I think we need public-private partnerships in order to drive that engine, and look forward to the interaction today.
Thank you, Freeholder. And Jackie?
Hi, I'm Jackie Berman. I am the president of regional, it's now called Najabo South or Shore, on Monmouth, Ocean, Middlesex. Najabo is New Jersey Association of Women Business Owners. And I guess I am representing the small business owner. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. And we should note that Senator Bob Smith will be joining us. He'll be arriving shortly. So as I mentioned, the idea of these events as we move through the state is to really capture a snapshot of the economy of the county. So each of you is certainly in a good position through the people that you talk to, the contacts you have, and the research that you've done to really know what people are feeling, kind of what ground zero is in Middlesex County. So Freeholder, why don't we start with you? We know that Middlesex County has a AAA bond rating. Mm-hmm. We know that median household income in Middlesex County is about $76,000. Those things sound pretty good. How would you characterize the state of the economy in Middlesex County?
I think that there are a lot of strengths in Middlesex County with our economy, but we still have a lot of people who are suffering. As we look to the highlights and the positives of what we've been able to do to try to bring new business in and try to stimulate the economy and growth, we have to recognize that we still have a poverty population of about 7.5%. We have a homeless population that continues to grow in the county that we need to be concerned about. So as we look to the successes of growth, we need to make sure that we're continuing to pull along those who need the help the most. So it's a difficult juggling act at times to try to focus your attention on both sectors, because candidly the needs are different. The resources that are required for each are different. But I think that's I guess that's the magic of public policy, is how do you orchestrate that to make sure that you're pulling up those who need the help while still trying to stimulate the general economy. And I think we're doing well with that. We still have a high vacancy rate in our commercial development areas and in our retail sector. But we've brought in a new team for economic development. We recently conducted a study to And I think it was a very good study where we had focus groups talking to retailers, to small businesses. And I think many of us, and I'm a small business owner as well, believe that it's the small business owners and small business that's going to drive the economy, that's going to make the difference, particularly in our county, I think across the state. So the question becomes, how do we help them? What type of hurdles do they face? You know, we talk about in government the high cost of pensions and healthcare costs. Well, small businesses are having the same problems.
Exactly. And Jackie, as the representative of Najabo, you see many women are turning to small businesses or starting small businesses. So I'd be interested in your experiences with women who are starting businesses now and women who have been in business.
Yeah, I see more women, not just women, but men also, who are now, they have been let go of their high-level corporate positions, and they are forced to start their own business. They have no alternative. There are no jobs out there for them, so they are creating their own jobs. So it's just more difficult. I'm finding more women and men who are still in corporate, and their income is lower, and they are now having second and third jobs too, just to support themselves.
So many people are becoming entrepreneurs by necessity rather than by choice.
Exactly. They have no choice. You know, they have no choice. But you know, it's either unemployment has run out, and they have to do something, and they're starting from scratch, and they're also looking and starting all new avenues that they've never done before. You know, I have one friend. He was let go of his media company. He worked for a major New Jersey radio station. He was let go. He started his own radio station, you know, and that's what people are doing. I did the same thing. I went into a second business, something I did not know, but you were forced to learn it, you know, just to meet and help make ends meet.
So I think certainly as the economy changes, people's idea of a steady stream of income, of a plan, a lifelong career plan, we're certainly seeing changes in those areas. And Kevin, maybe you can speak to some of your members, because certainly with so much of the economy dependent upon housing and building, I'm sure your members are seeing it as well.
Well, the world changed for the industry, for our members and the entire industry in September of '08. For years, our industry had the ability to provide a long-term, sustainable career for our membership, their families, which we could provide a really good wage, a good benefit package. Because of what took place in the housing authority, I mean, the entire economy is tied to the housing market. When that took place, the entire industry came to a screeching halt. There were members that worked for us, that were in the union for 30 years, who would speak to '08, early '09, middle of '09. We were there in the '70s. We know what it's like. You young guys, you'll figure this out. You learn how to survive. A lot of them are retired because they would, if they were here, they would tell you candidly that this is far worse than what we experienced back in the '70s within the industry. What it did for us as an entity, and prior to taking over as the president of the Contractor Trust, I was the chief of staff for the Carpenters Union as well. So I've had that unique experience to work with all of our stakeholders. What it did for us is it drove us to come up with a new business model. Our leadership over the last 3 years have recognized, almost 4 years now we're talking about this, that we can no longer maintain sustainability on the path we were at, including how we provide health care to our members, looking at how we can be more flexible in working with our wage rates. That's not to say that we're going to give up. That's not it at all. What we're trying to do is become a partner and work with end users. That had never been the case before, or very rare, should I say, that we would have a direct relationship with developers, end users. That has changed. We now, and just if I could for a quick moment, just to illustrate that, over the last couple of years, we have a pension fund, healthcare fund, annuity fund, and we have a board of trustees that has fiduciary obligations to ensure that health fund and that pension fund maintain. Clearly in '08, like every other health fund or pension fund, we took a hit. But through the foresight of our board of trustees, both management and labor, they said, look, we provide or allocate our money to fund managers that can, invest in a mall in California or wherever the case may be, or different vehicles. We need to use our assets to invest in New Jersey. We need to identify a fund manager that will work with end users, to work with developers. And we have done that. In the last 18 months to 2 years, one of our sole focuses has been to try to educate the development community and the end users that we are value added, that we're no longer just the stereotype that many had seen labor in the construction trades, but that we are now bringing equity to the game into the
So
table.
again, your members are becoming entrepreneurial, your organization is becoming more entrepreneurial by necessity.
Flexibility.
And I think, what you're saying, Jackie, and what you're saying, Kevin, is that many people are, I think, really just kind of caught certainly in the economy where they never expected to be. But it's different than in the 70s, as you pointed out, because we've got an entire change. It's not just a bad time and then things will go back to normal. Things have changed. So we've heard about this anecdotally, yes, from all of you. Stephanie, you've been doing the research that really shows, is this anecdotal or is this really widespread across the county?
Thank you. A lot of people have stories about struggling, and a lot of nonprofits, especially the United Way, have seen demand for their services increase drastically, but people still didn't know how much hardship is there, how many people are struggling. So the study that we conducted measured what it really costs to live in New Jersey. We know it's a very high cost of living state. And we broke it down by county because there's very big variation between Middlesex and Ocean and Essex, and that there's a very diverse state here. And we found that the poverty rate in the state is about 10%. We found another 24% of people struggling to afford just those basic household necessities. So we have a third of households in New Jersey unable to afford what it costs to live here. So the jobs aren't paying enough and the cost of living is still increasing. In Middlesex County, we see the poverty rate is 7% and what we call ALICE, another 21%. So part of that is because the economy has gotten tougher. And as you say, it's not just the short-term recession, it's some long-term shifts. So the number of low-paying jobs is about half of all jobs in the state.
So to look at those numbers a little bit, in Middlesex County, if you figure that what it takes to sustain a 4-person family, right? That number that I saw was $58,587 a year.
Correct.
That's for a couple and 2 children.
Correct.
Okay. The poverty, U.S. poverty level for a family of 4 is 22,000. So you're doing better than poverty level, but it takes that much more just to maintain in Middlesex County.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you break down the budget, it's helpful because when you see the cost of housing, you can't find housing for that. When you see the cost that we've allocated for health care, it's very hard to find health care for that price. So these are realistic, tough numbers, and it still adds up to a lot of money.
And do you find, these are countywide numbers, but one of the interesting things that I've seen as we look at each county across the state, in every county in New Jersey, there's such a disparity. You can find really affluent communities. You can find usually urban, but centers of poverty. So how do you, a couple of areas, how do you politically deal with that, with those needs? And then also, how do you develop an economy that's going to work for people in all areas? And this is a lot of questions, but kind of you play with this. Sure. Stephanie, do you find that it's easy to pinpoint and say, here's where the poverty is in Middlesex County, or is poverty kind of rampant and it's maybe hidden in some affluent communities?
Well, I think part of what we need to do is change the way we talk about this, because there are little pockets of poverty, but if you talk about people struggling, it's definitely across the county. So you can't just go and say, I'm going to focus on this one urban area, because you don't capture all of it. And I think that the needs of homeless that you mentioned are quite different than someone who's right on the edge of being able to afford financial stability. And so different policies need to be developed, different job strategies need to be developed. So in terms of understanding what the problem is, we have poverty, but we also have ALICE, we have financial hardship. that's a slightly different population.
So, Freeholder, from the county perspective, then, how do you design programs that, first of all, can identify where people are struggling, and programs that can speak to all of those needs, that wide diversity of needs?
Well, I think you have to be very proactive. You know, we talked about homelessness for a moment. The county actually has implemented a plan to end homelessness. We have allocated resources. We have a committee that's been set up at the county level, recently conducted an actual study on the street to determine how many people were out there at a given time on a given weekend. Because we needed hard data to understand what resources did we need to allocate. And we're looking at some innovative ways to try to create new housing opportunities where we could do reconstruction, renovation. We're looking at some communities that are more open to that type of opportunity. So we have to see how we can join together public and private resources to create housing opportunities to try to deal with the homelessness issue. When we talked about poverty, I think one group and sector, and I'm sure that you'll agree in your study, I'm sure pointed out as well, that we haven't mentioned is the senior population, and that goes across the board. There are so many seniors in our county who are at or well below the poverty level. These are individuals who worked all their lives, who have retired now, are on fixed incomes, who are trying to make the decisions between buying medication, paying their rent, or being able to put food on the table. That's a very, in some respects, a silent majority that we need to address, and I think that there are a lot of good programs that we've put together at the county, working with our municipal partners to try to provide them access to everything from free breakfast and lunch programs to other services that we can provide. To the heart of your question on the municipal issues, you're right, there are disparities in the communities as to what their needs are. I think our goal as the county, the layer between municipal and state government, is to try to determine what those specific needs are and allocate the resources to those communities as needed, because some communities have greater need than others in that area.
Absolutely. And actually, Senator Bob Smith just joined us, and you came in at a very opportune time. And just to catch you up a bit, we're talking about the income disparities in Middlesex County, the different situations, economic situations that many people find themselves in, and looking at how private employers deal with that, but specifically in your case, how does government dealing with that? You know, you're a state legislator, you're in Trenton, but you're also very involved as a former mayor and former council member in your town. What do you hear from your constituents? What are you seeing about their view of the economy? Are they hopeful? Are they concerned? Are they in despair? I mean, what are people thinking? How are they feeling about the economy in the county?
Well, it's no surprise to anybody in this room that people of Middlesex County, just like the people of the United States of America, are suffering in probably the most serious recession since the Great Depression. That being said, I've been knocking on doors every night since the day after Labor Day, I do sense a spirit of hopefulness and some optimism that I haven't felt before. People, I think, are beginning to feel that things are turning around in the economy. But in answer to the question, you know, what can we do? I think you have to take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves. And right now, the biggest single opportunity for the American economy, I believe, is the huge reserves of natural gas that have been discovered in the United States. And when you talk about stimulating the economy and jobs, we need a way to tap that, no pun intended. Europe, which has suffered with $8 plus per gallon of gasoline for decades, has done a pretty dramatic conversion to natural gas vehicles. Not a new technology, all right? And in New Jersey, if you want to buy a natural gas vehicle, there's only one for sale, and that's the Honda Civic. Even though General Motors and Ford and all the majors sell natural gas vehicles overseas. That's because they were forced to deal with the issue sooner. In any case, one of the real potential spurs to New Jersey's economy would be for this legislature and state government to stimulate that conversion. One of the statistics that people need to know is that you can literally, there's hundreds of thousands of homes in New Jersey that have natural gas as their fuel. If you just do a gas line into the garage, you can park your natural gas vehicle in the garage, put the hose on it, leave it overnight, and you have a recharged vehicle. You now have a vehicle that for half the money that you would pay for a tank of gasoline takes you the same distance. So could you imagine what it would be like in New Jersey if people, instead of paying $50 a week for a tank of gasoline, were paying $20 or $25 a week? They now have $20 or $30 to spend in their pocket. So you help people who are on modest incomes to survive by lower costs. You stimulate the economy. You stimulate construction. We should be helping our fleets of vehicles like school buses and commercial buses and garbage trucks to do that conversion. You can imagine the employment that would be stimulated, and at the same time put all that money back into the economy, jobs. And the other ancillary benefit, and it's a great benefit, 2/3 of the air pollution in New Jersey is transportation related. You cut that in half by going to a natural gas vehicle. So one of the new things that we're going to try and do this fall in the Senate Energy and Environment Committee, in fact, we have our first hearing on it tomorrow, is to see how we in government can stimulate this new tech. It's not a new technology, but an existing technology to help our citizens live using the money that they have, but getting more money back or having more money available, because we know everybody's suffering.
So your interest, your environmental interest, which has been one of your prime focuses, also then translates really well to this whole area of job growth and designing an economic future.
Well, in the last 3 years, one of the areas of growth in this state has been, the growth in jobs, has been solar energy.
Right.
I mean, we have more solar facilities in New Jersey than any other state in America except California. And remember, California has 4 times the population and probably 8 times the land area. So we've been very successful in stimulating that industry. That's put many, many laborers in New Jersey to work, but it also has generated a new alternative power source that's not putting more carbon pollution in the air. So there's a lot of things that we can do in government to stimulate those things, and that's really what Freeholder Polos and many of the other officials that are here today are trying to do, but we're always looking for new ideas. You know, if there's anybody out there with a good idea, we're happy to take it and run with it, and we'll even give you credit for it.
These are pretty far-reaching policy issues, and I guess Kevin and Jackie, you know, how do we connect? Do your members connect to these kinds of policy issues? First of all, I mean, how do we really get them aware of some of the things that are pretty heavy lifts that will make a real difference in their daily lives? As you said, Senator, I mean, there's a long way to go between an energy policy in New Jersey and $20 more a week in my pocket that I don't have to spend on gas. Is it possible that with the shift in the economy, it's a hard thing to say, but perhaps there are some people who just are not going to be able to retool, who aren't going to be able to train for these jobs in a solar industry, or, you know, what do we do with those?
I would say and your report, I think, speaks to this, that we're at a public policy crossroads nationally. And those who are going to be more proactive, such as Middlesex County, New Jersey, to a certain extent, but certainly Middlesex County, are really going to be ahead of the curve. You know, when I was Commissioner of Labor 10 years ago, when you talked about the urban areas or the focuses of real poverty, you know, we were investing considerable amount of money as a state, as a public policy, into certain areas around the state where there were real urban poverty issues. I think your report speaks to, yes, we have to maintain and ensure that we provide the assistance necessary, but this new economy has transcended that vulnerability, that real vulnerability. And I think that from a public policy perspective, I don't think we nationally have grappled with that. And I think those that work cooperatively, and a wonderful example of Middlesex County would be DevCo. They've been extremely proactive, extremely helpful. They've done the Gateway. They work with the Gateway Project, the Wellness Center, Rutgers University. What does that transcend to? That's putting our members to work. So not only are we developing this public policy initiative of private, public, and ensuring that our members are working, members that live in Middlesex County. But I think, once again, the report just highlights of where are we going to go publicly. I think the Senator highlighted a few initiatives that we should be taking advantage of, and we're not, nationally.
Just to jump in on that, because I think, and I know the Senator would agree, he's been a long advocate for solar energy in the state. The market's fallen apart. Solar renewable energy credit Values have dropped to an all-time low. There's no incentive any longer for private industry to get involved in putting this type of technology in. If you looked at a comprehensive plan, and again, I know the Senator's long advocated for this type of planning, there could be an opportunity here to stimulate the economy, create jobs, reduce our dependency on foreign as well as domestic oil, if we had a plan that envisioned really converting homes to solar technology. I mean, if we converted all the government entities in the county or in the state to solar, we'd still only reduce about 2% of the oil consumption. The real heart and soul is business and homes. But we don't really have a policy or a plan in place that will stimulate that will bundle together purchasing, create an opportunity for shared cost in the implementation of solar in our homes and in our businesses. There's no law, although the Senator has been kind enough to introduce something that would allow the bundling of purchasing of solar implementation in homes and businesses so that a community can actually put the money up front and pay for it, much like a sewer or a water improvement to a community, and allow those businesses and homes to pay it back over a 5-year period as an added assessment in their taxes. What that does is it creates buying power, drives down the per kilowatt cost of installation, and creates a much broader opportunity for installation. That stimulates the economy. It creates jobs for carpenters and electricians and others. It creates businesses for improvement and maintenance. We create more small business opportunities for men and women. So, but it has to be a cohesive policy where you've got government realizing that there's a need, there's an opportunity. But it just seems, for whatever reason, both nationally and at the state level, we haven't seized that opportunity and really implemented something. Even though we've had great, strong advocates, it seems to be there needs to be a better cohesive policy, and it could cure not all the ills, but certainly could make a big difference.
Well, let me ask the two people on the panel who are in a position to do something about that. Senator, what are the chances for something like that happening in New Jersey? And Freeholder, can you make something like that happen at a county level? Or are you really dependent upon state legislation?
We're dependent. This has been something that I had actually proposed several years ago, and fortunately Senator Smith was the one who had picked up on the idea. This came as a result of our meetings that we had with homeowners in our county as we were implementing solar technology, and we started our implementation 10 years ago before it was the vogue thing to do. And what we heard from residents, and it was truthful, we don't know anything about solar technology. It's a very confusing and technical program. There are so many vendors out there, we don't know who to go to. It's very costly, we don't have the money to put up front. How can we cure that? So the proposal was if the community could come in and assemble those homes who are interested in putting in solar, go out for a buy of solar for all of those properties, implement it, and then charge it back to the homeowners. It drives the cost down, ensures a better product, gets a higher quality of installation. And again, thanks to the Senator, he put legislation together that introduced a program like that. I don't know the status of it. I'm sure he would know better at this point.
Senator?
But we have two pieces of legislation that are signed into law. One ESIP and the other PACE. The Energy Savings Improvement Plan program allows public entities, school boards, counties, improvement authorities, whatever, to put out an RFP for energy efficiency and also energy improvements. Some people will tell you that the cheapest energy savings is efficiency, where you make your buildings tighter and et cetera. But there's also new equipment, new heating, ventilation, air conditioning, that kind of stuff. But this ESIP program allows any of these governments to send out an RFP. There are energy service ESCOs, energy service companies, that will put in the improvements. There's no cost to the taxpayer. And the way that works is that you continue to pay your electric or your heating bill as it was before the improvements until the improvements paid off. And then when the improvements paid off, the taxpayers then get the benefit of the lower costs. The other bill that was just signed into law in the last year was PACE, and the PACE bill allows municipal governments, should they choose to provide this for their citizens, to have an energy efficiency or energy improvement. So you could, again, you're either tightening up homes to make them more energy efficient, or you're providing new technologies, solar, wind, or whatever. And what they can, the town can advance the money through a bond issue. They get it paid back as a local assessment over 10 years. So the homeowners have the advantage of the lowest cost improvement, because governments can borrow money at that much in terms of the interest rate, and it's even lower with the way the economy is. So you now have these improvements going into the home. You have the consumer getting a much more energy efficient home, or a new technology energy system for their home. The town gets higher assessments. And you put people to work.
These are great programs. There's two things that we haven't talked. One thing we haven't talked about at all. We've got about 10 minutes left in this discussion, and I know, Senator, you've been instrumental in putting together some legislation that would allow the consolidation of municipalities.
Yes, but the BRAC, Base Closing Commission legislation, hasn't been overly successful because this is criticizing one of the authors. Couldn't get the legislature to go along with having it a majority vote of the two communities, as opposed to both communities have to agree to it. Okay. That's always been the stumbling block to consolidation, whether it's municipal or school, because invariably somebody in one community says, if we combine with town X, we, town Y, will have a heavier tax burden. There's always one town that has a few more ratables or a few less ratables, and somebody raises that issue, and people then say, this is not something we want to do, even though we're going to get pretty good consolidation.
So how much of an impact does that have on, say, on the county economy? Do you think that if we were to see consolidation of services, consolidations of towns, would that be a drastic change in the county economy? Would that make your life easier as a county governing official?
I believe that consolidation can work in some instances, but I don't think it's the panacea that everyone has labeled it to be. I'm not necessarily an advocate for the forced consolidation of communities.
Not necessarily just with consolidation, let me clarify that, but for shared services, things like that as well.
Shared service, I'm actually founder of the Shared Services Association of New Jersey, so I've been a long-time advocate of sharing services. I think it's the way to go. What has happened, though, in the last several years, and it's unfortunate, there was, I think, a commitment on the part of the state for several years to actually foster more shared services. There was funding that was provided to the counties for shared service coordinators. It came as a result of actually Middlesex County's request to the state to create an opportunity for us to have individuals with boots on the ground in the local level to work with the communities to look at sharing services. The funding for that dried up about 2 years ago, and there were also some other capital incentives to provide dollars for studies on sharing things like public safety dispatch. We took advantage of those opportunities in the county, and as a result of that, we fostered several shared service arrangements, trash collection in Carteret and Woodbridge, shared service arrangement between Rutgers and Dunellen for dispatch service, a review of South County communities on police and public safety dispatch. But without that funding available, it makes it very difficult to try to foster those opportunities. So one of the things that I think from the county and from the municipality standpoint is we need more direction and actually some funding from the state if we're going to create those opportunities with a community. And as a former mayor, I know how difficult it is to juggle the day-to-day operations. We're now dealing with a state mandated cap. With all these other mandates that we have, there's no extra dollars to sit out and say, well, we're going to study a consolidation or shared service plan between ourselves and the local community, and how do we go about that? Capital dollars are needed, some additional infusion of money. I think some real hands-on from the state to help foster that would be, I think, a big help.
So we're sacrificing some long-term policy changes, perhaps, because we don't have short-term funding to examine the issues.
I think that we've lost some opportunities that could have, I know we've lost some in the county that could have been created as a result if we had some funding available to us. I understand that the state can't be the bank for everyone, but one would hope that there would be a way to try to create something, at least some opportunity to create some incentive for us to be able to do that.
Stephanie?
Yes, I just wanted to add in that from Alice's perspective, there's a huge need for better coordinating services. That anybody who drove here today knows that most people don't live and work in the same place. So as places get more and less expensive, people move further and further away from their jobs, but then they're using services, maybe they're using them where they live, but maybe they're using them where they work, which impacts a lot of social services, medical care, as well as congestion on the roads. But that you can't just focus anymore on one single area because our state is so interconnected.
That's a great point. Let me ask you all to wrap up with a closing thought. And I'm going to start with, we'll start with Jackie, because you're the radio personality here. We're going to put you on the spot, and then to Kevin. But to ask each of you to identify, we've heard a lot about small changes that are in the works and about huge policy changes that should be made or could be made. From your perspectives, Kevin and Jackie, what do you think is the single most important thing that could be done in Middlesex County to improve the lives of your stakeholders in the coming year? Kevin,
Well,
start.
Yeah, I think it's more than, as the Freeholder said and the Senator said, it's more than just Middlesex County. I think Middlesex County has been proactive in trying to work with the stakeholders, the municipalities, the trades, et al., to take this moment of crisis to turn it into an opportunity. Where I think that we have nationally missed the opportunity through public policy to really begin to understand that this was a seminal moment, unlike we've seen since the 30s, excuse me, the Great Depression. And the fundamental idea that Alice and Stephanie's report highlighted when I read it was, we are seeing a shrinking middle class. And the greatest period of growth, and you don't need to be Paul Krugman to know this, of expansion, of economic expansion in the world was between 1945 and 1975 to the 80s. And what did you see? With the burgeoning middle class through programs like the GI Bill, the expansion of public education, so on and so forth. Investment in our infrastructure. I mean, our infrastructure started under President Eisenhower. So to recoil at this time and to say, there are certain markets that can handle this, I just think was a missed opportunity. I think actually Middlesex County during this time demonstrated the leadership and took advantage of that, the Freeholder Board at all.
So one thing, if you could wave your magic wand and say, it's 2013 and you're talking to your members at the annual meeting and you want to say that things are better, what one thing could you make happen, whether it be at a county level or state level or national level, but one thing do you think really could happen that would have the most impact on the real, what do I bring home every week in the paycheck kind of lives of your stakeholders? The
commitment of private, because it's no longer just governmental resources as capital that turn this around, but understanding from a public policy perspective that we need to work with a private-public understanding, a mindset that we can rebuild our infrastructure and put our members to work. And if we actually execute that idea, we'll be fundamentally better off as a state and a region and ultimately national.
Jackie, from your perspective.
Okay, I see it totally different. I'm coming from a small business owner, and I don't see a lot of the government really supporting the local small businesses. Marlboro, I just met with Mayor Hornick last week, implemented an amazing, they're doing something that's really helping small business. They have Shop Marlboro, where they are giving everybody who is a Marlboro resident, they get a little card, and if they shop in Marlboro, they get dollars taken off of their local taxes. Wow. And that's forcing people to shop locally. And that's what the small business owner needs. I mean, Senator, what you're saying is great, but that doesn't help the small business owner now. That's years down the road. And small business owners are hurting right now, and they need something immediately. I still see shops and stores closing constantly. There's still for rent out there. There's more that are closing than are opening, and the ones that do open close very quickly. And we need more support from the local governments to really implement something, some kind of program where you're shopping locally and to, just to help the local business owner.
Okay, Stephanie, what's your take?
Right now, the Department of Labor has projected job growth in Middlesex, 46% low-skilled jobs, 13% high-skilled jobs. And I think that the challenge for Middlesex is to shift that low-skilled jobs don't pay enough to live here, and that you need to have more middle and high-skilled jobs for the Middlesex residents.
Freeholder, and we'll let you have the last word, Senator.
I guess two answers to the question. One, on a short-term basis, to wave a wand, I believe that if we could reduce the approval and regulatory process we would stimulate more business growth development, both for small businesses as well as large businesses. Small businesses encounter the same problems as large ones do. You go to the local municipality for your zoning permit to open up your store, and you're there for 4 months going through an approval process. Much worse even at the state level. So if we could wave a wand and fix that, businesses would open quicker, they'd expand more, we'd create more opportunity for employment. I think on a more global basis as a county freeholder, and I want to thank you for involving the county in this discussion, I think that it's been a level of government that's been forgotten. If you combine the total budgets of the 21 counties in the state of New Jersey, we account for about $7.5 billion in taxpayer money. Yet we're very seldom involved in the process or discussion, both at the state level, and we help our municipalities, but we're kind of disconnected from the state insofar as what we can offer in consolidation services and in shared services. And I think that if we could involve the county government more in that type of planning, I think that we would create much more efficiency, reduce the cost of government, and therefore reduce the burden on the local taxpayer.
Okay. And Senator?
Two answers to the question, the magic wand question. And not to bring up a totally different topic at the last minute of the program.
Never do that.
But going back to that concept of consolidation and shared services, New Jersey has managed to put together the most wasteful and inefficient educational delivery system in America. We have over 600 school districts. Every other state in the United States is reducing the number of school districts. We found a way over the last 50 years to increase the numbers. And the problem with that is you end up with 600 plus superintendents, 600 plus assistant superintendents, 600 board attorneys, 600 purchasing departments, 600 transportation systems, et cetera. 15 states of the United States of America have county-based delivery of educational services. And if you look at states that are comparable in size and educational levels and economic levels, they deliver educational services at about 2/3 the cost that we do, all right, which is amazing. And I think New Jersey's at that point where it's an alternative that should be considered. If you had county-based services, you would end up dramatically increasing at least the administrative cost of the district. And that's not saying cut one teacher or hurt an educational program in any way. In fact, if you had county-based services, you might be able to have arts high schools or science high schools.
And I didn't even ask you to set up the next panel on education. But
Yeah, well, it's kind of a... And the other thing I want to mention with regard, and it's not a want, it's happening as we sit here. Middlesex County is about to become the energy capital of New Jersey. A company called Vopak, the largest store of bulk liquids in the world, 81 terminals in 31 countries, just bought the Hess refinery. And they're going to build a whole new storage facility. Chevron just sold 80 acres to the Buckeye Pipeline in Perth Amboy, which is going to become a whole new Buckeye facility. In Woodbridge, there's going to be a new base load energy producing facility. CPV?
Yeah, I believe that's it.
Yeah, I think that's the name of the company as well. But they're going forward with new base load capacity, which is going to help on our energy rates long term. Middlesex County is, if you've looked at the state, we're just right there in the geographic center. Everything goes through us, not just transportation, but all these energy pipelines. So we have an opportunity here to really take part in that new energy economy in Middlesex County, which is going to stimulate a lot of new jobs.
Yeah,
so I'm an optimist.
Yeah. Okay.
The glass is more than half full.
Good, and that's, I'm going to ask you all just up or down, optimistic, pessimistic about if we come back in a year. What's your sense?
Hopefully in a year it will be a little bit better, but right now I don't see it. You know, I still see struggling with all the small businesses.
Freeholder?
I'm optimistic. I read last year's 2011 report, and I think we've made great strides since then.
Stephanie?
I think with an unemployment rate of 9.6 and a lot of Alice families not having any savings left, I'm not very optimistic.
Kevin?
I think that I'll take the fence. I think there's going to be that underlying issue that Alice speaks to, but I do echo and I agree with both the senator and the freeholder that the ingenuity at the local level will begin to help us take us out of this.
Terrific. Well, I'd like to thank you all for participating with us this morning, and we'll move into our next panel. We're running a little bit late. We got a little late start because of the traffic and congestion in New Jersey, but thank you all for being here, and if our next panelists will come forward, we'll start with the education segment. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.